Good morning. Um, Yesterday there were two books that launched. One of them was the Dash of Darcy Duo. This is not a new book. This is a book that contains two books that I've written, two short novellas that are written to be short and sweet and quick reads, something that you can just take a couple of hours and enjoy a little dash of Darcy. Um, Finally, Mrs. Darcy just came out a little over a month, almost 2 months ago now, and Waking to Mr. Darcy just came out yesterday. It's brand new, and I was actually going to read you a little bit of that book today. So this is the Waking to Mr. Darcy book. What it looks like. It's very thin. It's a quick read. It's quick and sweet and just meant for enjoyment. Um, Very focused on one main theme, just like Finally Mrs. Darcy was. That was focused mainly on forgiveness and restoration. This one is on coming to your senses about something, seeing something in a new light, waking up to things that you hadn't seen before. And the person in this book that needs to do that is Elizabeth. She wakes up physically because she does get injured and she's um, not awake or aware of her surroundings. And then she wakes up to find out that, she's going to have to marry Mr. Darcy. And how can she marry someone she doesn't like? And that's the little beginning, the little scene of where she's realizing that she needs to maybe look at things a little bit differently. It starts with her. She's trying to go back to sleep to get some rest so that, the pounding in her head will stop and maybe her fever will go away, those sorts of things. And it ends with a little, I guess, dream sequence. She's not quite asleep yet, when you're kind of in between sleep and not sleeping, and yet there are things that go on inside your mind. It's kind of one of those feelings for her. And it's recounting some of the things that if you've read Pride and Prejudice, you would see happened at the card party at Mrs. Phillips's house, where Wickham is first talking to Elizabeth. I didn't want to just regurgitate the original text, so I tried to weave it in a way. There are bits and pieces that are taken from the original that are woven into that scene. All right, so this is chapter 4 in the book. And it's just the very beginning part. It's not very long. Time stretched on, one long, quiet minute after another. Elizabeth shifted in her bed, attempting to get comfortable. The pain in her head and leg made the task somewhat difficult, but her mind made it nearly impossible. Mrs. Darcy. The words echoed in her mind over and over. She was to be married to the man she despised. There was no hope of avoidance of the fact. She was alone with him in a cabin, somewhere near Netherfield, dressed only in his shirt. She closed her eyes in mortification, which he had put on her. How was she to accept such a fate? How was she to accept such a man? She drew in a deep breath and released it slowly, perhaps after a good rest. Her head would not hurt as much, and the spinning would stop. Then, possibly then, she would be able to reconcile herself to her fate. Eventually, she drifted into a state of half-wakefulness. Her mind refused to stop its work, but her body was equally as eager to find rest. The card party at her Aunt Phillips's house played in her mind. The tables, all neatly and cosily arranged, the excitement of Lydia at having won a bet, the droning of her cousin, attempting to fill the room with praises of his patroness, and Wickham. Even in her state of semi-awareness, she smiled at the name. His description of the weather had been most pleasant, an unusual occurrence, for normally such small talk was dull. However, his ability with words had made it delightful. She almost wished for the rain, as he spoke of it. Oh, the rain. She would listen to that. Perhaps it would drown out her ruminations and allow for sleep. For a time it worked. Her mind relaxed. She thought about nothing but the constant dripping and tapping of the rain. And then, just as she was about to drift into a dream, Wickham's voice returned, but not as it had been before. This time, as the dream took it, the words twisted and turned, converging with those of her sister's. I have no right to give my opinion, Wickham smiled. He is correct, said Jane from the corner. He has no right on such a short acquaintance to speak to you of such things. Do not listen. I have known him too long and too well to be a fair judge. It is impossible for me to be impartial, Wickham continued. He speaks the truth again, Jane whispered in her ear. His words are partial. He tells what he believes to be true, but it is only his view. The window might be cloudy. Play continued around them, but did not include them. They sat as ghosts, unseen by the others. The world is blinded by his fortune and consequence, or frightened by his high and imposing manners, and sees him only as he chooses to be seen. Wickham cocked his head to the side and placed a hand on Elizabeth's. He is trying to draw you in, Jane whispered. Jane's whisper was sharp, and she drew Elizabeth's hand out from under Wickham's. He wishes you to see him only as he wishes to be seen, and he only wishes you to see Mr. Darcy as he wishes you to see the man. Do not listen any longer. He has treated me ill, continued Wickham, which I cannot but attribute in some measure to jealousy. Oh, Jane moved between Elizabeth and Wickham. Jealousy is definitely at play, but who is the more jealous remains to be seen. Come away with me, dear sister. Wickham's eyes filled with sorrow, but Elizabeth could not tell if it was genuinely felt or feigned. I would never dishonor his father, but to him I cannot be just. He is not just. Jane's hand cupped Elizabeth's face. He is not just. Mr. Darcy is good. Mr. Bingley is his friend. So how could he be anything less than good? Be reasonable, Elizabeth. Come away with me. We have had enough of this man's charming words. Wickham pushed Jane to the side with a wink and a smile. Mr. Darcy can please where he chooses. He does not want abilities. He can be a conversable companion if he thinks it worth his while. Among those who are at all his equals in consequence, he is a very different man from what he is to the less prosperous. Dear sister, beware. Remember what you have seen of Mr. Darcy. Remember how he acted at Netherfield. Consider how he acted just now. Is this the man Mr. Wickham describes? She pulled at Elizabeth's arms to draw her away. Do not judge a man based solely on the words of another man, who shares such secrets whom you have only just met. Be wise. Consider. Judge for yourself. Come away. I will, murmured Elizabeth, as the images faded into the mist of sleep. So she's replaying in her mind things that she's heard, and she's semi-consciously starting to evaluate them in a different light. And she will continue to evaluate those words and the things that have happened and try to come to terms with her fate of having to be Mrs. Darcy, even though she at this time doesn't like him. It comes around fairly quickly. It's a short book, so it doesn't take her very long to come to her senses and see that he is a good person, which I don't think it really took her a really long time after she actually stopped, read the letter, and figured out who he was in the original as well. So that is the new book. It's about seeing people in a new light, to actually consider things from a different perspective, to look at things with an open mind and open heart, and to try not to just base our decisions on prejudices or one-time experiences, but to be more accepting than that. And that's what this book is about. So if you get a chance, it's only $2.99 US anyway, on Kobo, Apple, Kindle, Nook, and there's a couple of other subscription-based services where you can pay your subscription and read and things like that. But it's also on. You can find that in my book page if you want. on my website, which is LanieBrown.com. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I hope you get a chance to read this short little sweet book.